Hey, NBT Nation, Adam Spact here, certified no boring trainer. Another edition of NBT Talks, and I am so excited to have my good friend Ivonne Martin with us to talk all things instructional design. Here on the channel, we do a lot about the delivery of classroom sessions, but there are so many other ways to deliver knowledge to help your organization grow, to help people get stronger, help them develop, take care of the customer better, all that. So enough commercial and fancy intro. Yvonne is joining me from the beautiful Sunshine State. And like I said, we're going to talk about utilizing e-learning to really help move an organization forward. So Yvonne, thanks for joining me today to chit chat a little bit. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your holiday for me.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be a part of this and collaborating with you. But yeah, I'm here to answer any questions, talk all things instructional design, and see where it takes us.
That's fantastic. So, if you would just tell us a little bit about your background. I know you've got a master's in instructional design, but tell us a little bit about your history. What led you into this field?
Well, so I'm a little bit different. I have a very unique professional background. I started in emergency services and I worked in that field for a very long time. I started as a emergency medical technician, then segued to 911 dispatcher. And then when I was dispatching, I knew that I didn't want to do shift work and that type of work for it's very, it's a very tough type of work, very on the mind, and overall physical and emotional health. So I decided to go back to school and I decided to go into teaching. So while I was working overnight as a 911 dispatcher, I pursued my education in teaching and then finally made my exit into the world of entering the world of teaching, special education. I did that for about 5 years. And while I was doing that, I knew, although I love teaching, it's just not something that I long term was a good fit for me. So while I was teaching, I decided to pursue my master's in instructional design. And at that point, I don't think a lot of people knew what instructional design was. Was very still very foreign concept. Like what is even that? Like my mom still thinks to this day I design websites, but that's a story for another day.
Gloss over that.
Yeah, but yeah, and so I did that while I was teaching, and I decided to finish my master's, and I was still a teacher, and then I found a small company in Orlando who gave me an opportunity to work as an instructional and like an introduction to instructional design, which was very difficult to break into that field back in the day without a master's degree fully. So I was able to work there for a little bit, and that's kind of how it all started. It all evolved that way. So
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, uh, help the audience to understand what is instructional design and where does that kind of fit in into the whole L&D space?
well, instructional design is basically like design and curriculum. So, like where you design and create curriculum and learning for various things. It could be like professional learning certifications. It could be for like long-term certifications. For example, I work for a company, a nonprofit, where we create certifications for people who don't have the appropriate credentials to become teachers but need it. So like that type of thing, a certification to segue into that, professional development training, like, in higher, there's so many different sectors in instructional design, right? You have like government, higher education, nonprofit, corporate, and you as an instructional designer help people create that training that people need at certain organizations to be able to like grow professionally, to learn a new skill, to maintain their skills, things like that.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you kind of laying the groundwork there. And as we were chatting before we hopped on, or in the run up to collabing together on this, obviously NBT, no boring training, we really focus on how do you transform the training in a business to drive
Mhm.
business results. And we've all sat through horrible, awful, miserable, boring training sessions, whether it be in-person classroom or an e-learning module where you just get done with this.
Yeah.
subject matter expert comes in for a live session and blasts you in the face with too much detail. Where does corporate learning go wrong? Let's kind of start big picture. Where does corporate training go wrong, especially those sort of small and medium-sized firms?
Where do they go wrong? So like where do they go wrong in a sense of like creating training or like training their people
Yeah, so
or
from like from the planning or curriculum perspective, or when they're thinking about certifications, or just the idea of kind of putting all these pieces together
Mhm.
as opposed to subject matter expert just walks in the room and just starts vomiting up information. Where do those smaller, medium-sized firms how could they improve the training from the curriculum side of things? Maybe that's a more I should have more coffee.
No, it's fine. I feel, yeah, no, I feel like this, I could answer two questions like that because in the corporate setting, sometimes it just depends on the needs of the company, right? But then sometimes it's not always as clear or like the budget's very tight or they don't want to provide is enough like budget to provide quality training is there's so many things that could go into that. Like sometimes with smaller companies, like they just need to have a clear needs analysis, like that's the first step in instructional design. Like you need to have ask the questions like what is it that the people need? Like what do they need? Where are they lacking? What skills do we need to be able to like improve the company, but also improve the people who are part of the company to be able to efficiently do the work, right? And I'm like trying to think. I'm like budget wise, like I've been at companies like both big and small, and like a lot of the problem that I've seen is that they want to create training and like they know what the needs are, but then they also try to create the training in a way that's I say it without sounding like too they don't want to put the money into it. Like they you know what I mean? Like I don't
I
know
mean,
how to say it
yeah.
without like they don't want to put the money into it and they want to do things very rushed, because sometimes bigger companies, to me, my mindset is sometimes the is that they just want to pump out the training and not really think about like the learning experience. How is that going to affect the learning? Is it going to be an effective learning experience? No, sometimes like they just want to meet quotas or sales or goals and pump it out and not really see that, hey, it's not the best training that it could be for a great learning experience. And then it may seem great at the beginning, but at the end of the day, if it's not a solid training, then that could negatively reflect over time, you know what I mean? And like and the way that people learn and like lack of learning and I don't know, like there's just I feel like I just talked a lot. I vomited a lot of information. I need to be like more cohesive with my thought process.
No,
Like
I
for
mean
my last my
there are
last company, yeah, I was like that where I usually work for nonprofits because so like, as I mentioned, I worked in emergency services and I was a teacher, so I'm like a service person, right? I like to help people. And so like nonprofits have been my jam. And so like I tend to gravitate towards missions that are aligned and I'm passionate about. But then
for
like
sure.
when things start to like kind of deviate from the mission, I'm like, oh no, we're like going away from the path and we're not really creating like the great learning experiences that we could be creating. Um, and at the end of the day, I want it to be great learning experiences for people who are taking the courses that we create. I don't want people to take the courses and be like, oh my goodness, I'm bored, or this isn't getting me anywhere, or this is like horrible training. Like, I don't want to be associated with that type of um, course curriculum or instructional design. Like to me, a successful course is if someone who takes the course and says, wow, this was amazing. Wow, I learned a lot from it. And I am able to take the skills that I learned in this training and like implement it into real life, right? Like into my actual position. what else was help me out? What else?
Well, you've got
What?
so many great nuggets in there. I mean, like you said, there's the organizations who don't want to invest in training, and there's no training period, regardless of what form it comes in. And those obviously, I mean, that's an obvious subset of problems.
My gosh,
Uh,
yes. Then
then
yeah,
there's
I was gonna say that was that.
yeah,
That's
that's
good.
that like all of us are online screaming about that all day long. Um, then you've got the subset of companies who recognize that, oh yeah, training is important. We got to do some training, but it's such an afterthought. It's such a like you were saying, tick the box activity. Oh yeah, we did some training, but it's some thrown together crappy, horrible thing that they're like you say, they just want to rush through. And it seems like, especially, it seems to be two spectrums there. One is we know we have a certification issue, we have a regulatory compliance thing, we have to do this training, but let's just plow through it as quick as we can, get it done. Or it's a maybe more of a corporate type setting. And again, they're just wanting to get it done, but it's just so rushed and thrown together that
Yeah.
it's awful. So that's,
Yeah.
and then you talk about the learning experience. So let's really kind of zero in on that, because I think that's something those companies that at least want to offer something, they
Mhm.
really missed the boat, or that's a huge opportunity for them to make their training in their organization better. So let's talk a little bit about that learning experience. What are some of the basics that if you're a young company and you're starting to put a training together, what are some of the basics of learning experience that they should think about?
I feel like that's why it's also important to make sure that you have someone on the team, like an instructional designer who really truly understands like the instructional design process from beginning to end. Because like if you don't have like that experience, then you're not gonna understand truly what it like the learning experience, right? Like how that impacts the learner. You want to be able to create sound training, good, engaging training, but sometimes, like I said, it's all rushed and like people don't really have a true understanding. They're just like, get it together, get it done, do it as fast as you can, and that's not really how it's supposed to be. Um, at the end of the day, learning experiences to me is like I said, that's like our successful marker, right? Like to make sure that, or like to know that a learner had a great, successful learning experience. There's a lot of things to consider, like sometimes when it comes to learning, I feel like it's just a broad question because like it just depends on the type of company and things like the type of resources that you have. But like you have to really see like where, I guess, like what the learning needs are within the company. Like, would they benefit from an in-person like, like an in-person training? I'm like trying, an instructor-led training. I'm like, like an instructor-led training, like an on-site training, like over multiple days, or will they benefit from like an online learning experience where they really have more control over their learning? Like they have the ability to like pace themselves with the learning, and it's not like rushed in a day, or like they could learn over time. Also like, are they busy? Like do you really have the time to dedicate to like an on-site turn a learning experience or like an onboarding experience like that? Um, it just really depends. You just have to do like a needs analysis to see where like people are within the, like what is the needs, and that's how it all begins. I'm not very good at explaining. I'm nervous. I'm like,
No, no,
I'm
this is this
nervous.
it's and it's the what I heard from that, the needs analysis is such an important thing. I've seen so many times where usually what happens is somebody makes a mistake, somebody screws something up, not out of maliciousness, but just a
Yeah.
genuine mistake. And then a manager or a senior leader experiences that, freaks out. We need to have a training. And there's no real clear, like, well, what are we trying to do here? And it sort of becomes weaponized training at that point, and that's horrible. Or it's again those leaders of small, medium-sized companies who they know intuitively that they need some training, but that's like kind of where the thought ends. We need to do training. Then they go up to some poor person. Usually it's the person who's been there the longest, has the most accrued knowledge, has a big title. Whether or not they're actually good at teaching people is irrelevant.
Right.
Uh, and then that person gets tapped on the shoulder and say, "Hey, go put this training together." And we both know that that can be a disaster. So no, I think I would agree with you 100%. That needs analysis. What do we actually need? What are the skills gaps, the
Yeah,
behavior issues, the knowledge that people need to be successful? What are the certification and regulatory requirements? What are the industry requirements? What's going to give us a competitive advantage?
that
You know,
too.
all
Yeah,
that stuff, and figure out, okay, this is the outcome we're trying to get to so that people can be successful and our customers are happy. So yeah, I don't think you're off base whatsoever with that. I think everybody sees training and they think it's the delivery piece or the
yeah.
experience on the screen, and they forget about it all starts with a needs analysis. Otherwise, I mean, put the A in Addy, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly how it is. And I feel like that's skipped on a lot, like at least from my experience. Um, like that's not like it's just not common practice, even though it should be. And I don't know, like that again, this is totally based off my experience. Like I don't know
For sure.
what else like other instructional designers have experienced or are experiencing, but usually like when I went to school, obviously like we were taught to very formalized theory process, like like this is the like the ADDIE model and like different models like SAM and things like that. You have to like follow a certain step and this is how it goes. And like so like for me, like when I go into like a place of employment or like a client job, I'm always thinking from the top, like that, like from the start. What is the needs? What do you need? What is your goal? And I feel like that's skipped on a lot. It's definitely skipped on a lot, and it's kind of sucks because like again, at the end of the day, like the training isn't as great as you want it to be, or it's not gonna hit the goal that you need it to hit. And then the learning experience may not be as great either. So those are things to consider. Um,
Do you
Not just for a
find,
small company, but everyone.
yeah, for sure. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Do you find that when you get a request,
Mhm.
hey, we need a training on blah, 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 that when you come back with the sort of structured process of here's my diagnostic questions or here's my, just my go-to questions that I'm going to ask. Why do you need this? What are you trying to achieve? What are the roadblocks? Who's the audit? All the normal questions.
Mhm.
Do you find that over time those individuals sort of get trained to expect, oh, here comes Yvonne. I know the question she's going to ask me, so I better get this ready? Or is it always you got to go through it again and again and again?
I feel like so, I mean, yeah, like people know for sure that I'm more of a like I like to go through the whole process, right? Like I want to make sure I have as much information and understanding as possible because for me that's going to help me really understand how I'm going to design and create a training. At the end of the day, that's going to give me more of an understanding, and I'm more of a like I am that type of person that asks all the questions. I am that person that will ask all the questions. So, and no, so I feel like at least in my current location, it's not like it's even though like they know that I'm gonna ask all the questions, it's still not something that is naturally provided. Like I still have to go through the process and ask all the questions. Otherwise, like it's just like do the thing and you know.
Yeah, just go do that training thing.
Wait. We could do it, but I need to know like other stuff too. So
And don't use that Comic Sans font. I hate that font.
I know. Yeah. And I feel like there's just so much in that. Like I've been at companies where they do have a formalized process. When they like, as in the way that they approach their instructional design process, and then I've been at places where there's like none. and like literally you have to create the process. Like I've been there where, we're helping create the process so that so the next time we do start to train like design and development process, you know what to expect. Like there's a process. Like to me, like like you can't like do the thing well without having the steps to do the thing. You know what I mean? Like you have to have a foundation before you could like design and create something. Like to me, like this is just wild. Or like you go into places and they don't have like they're just like do it. I'm like, well, wait, do you have a process on how to do X, Y, Z? Oh no, 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 no. But you kind of do need it. I don't know.
Well, no, see, we have Gloria over there. She's been here for 98 years, and everybody that comes in, they spend 10 minutes with Gloria, and I,
I've
it,
been no, I've been so like I'll throw my sister in here, but my sister actually went through something similar where like she works for a big corporate company and like her onboarding process was literally like go see this person and they will give you like talk to you if you have any questions. Like it was like that. And I like to me I'm like, damn, like this is a big company that has a lot of money, but you're not like taking the time to create and develop a solid onboarding process. Like to me, like this just like what? Yeah, yeah,
some of the stats on onboarding are just shocking. Like
like
you
it's
say,
crazy.
and no offense to anybody named Gloria out there in NBT Nation, but yeah, it's welcome to this $1 trillion company, and go sit with Bob, and he'll tell you everything you need to know, and it's just crazy. So
And then expect you to be up and running,
yeah, why aren't you
like you know.
performing? You haven't hit your KPIs. It's been 10 minutes. What's wrong with you? It is shocking. So needs analysis, huge opportunity for any company really. If you feel like you need some training, you got to start with really understanding the need. And that could be its own episode. So I
Oh
definitely
yeah.
feel like that's a huge opportunity for organizations. In terms of learning experience, do you have a preference on the delivery method when you're putting curriculum together, or are you just focused on let me get the right topics in the right order first?
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask about. I'm always like a fan of e-learning. I even from like back in the day, I think I've just been fascinated with the online world. Like back in the AOL days, right? Like when we had to like connect the PC to
You've
but
got
anyway.
mail.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Like that's always just been like fascinating to me. To me, like that there's a whole world out there on the internet that you could just learn anything you really want to learn about. So like to me, online learning is always like my preferred way of learning for me, and I think it just offers so much flexibility. Especially like if you're like a lot of people are like working parents or like working adults or like like you just have a lot going on in life, so like you want to have some control over like when you learn and how you learn. And so like I feel like e-learning, online learning experiences really does offer that flexibility,
Well,
even in
let's
the military. Like there's a lot of people who are, I see like like there are people who are military and like need that flexibility like to learn online. Like they don't so
yeah,
anyways, yeah.
yeah, let's camp on e-learning for a little bit. So, anybody in NBT Nation is, my jam is kind of the classroom-based delivery piece. I've dabbled, I've put together some e-learning modules and courses, but I am an amateur for sure on the e-learning side of things. So, I really want to pick your brain on what are, I feel like e-learning for a smaller, medium-sized company could be such a great tool, and a lot of people have this, I think, resistance because they experienced like the canned, generic, off the shelf e learning that's, maybe a compliance level topic or something
Hmm.
that's very generic. And so they get into it and they're just like, how do I click through as quick as I can? I feel like there's this opportunity for organizations to really customize their e-learning and really dial it into the needs of that nonprofit, that corporation or whatever. So let's talk a little bit about the e-learning side of things. Do you think I'm off base on that? Is that an opportunity maybe for those smaller, medium-sized companies, or do you think I've not had enough coffee yet today?
No, I think that's a totally valid thought process. I think like smaller, medium-sized companies would really benefit from having that customized like e-learning experiences. It's again, it just offers like, and I know you say like the compliance training, like we all like try to click through it, but like there's also like a way to make those experiences not as boring and not want to make you click through all of it, and it's all about like the way that you design and develop the course. There's you pace people when they're doing the learning experiences. It's not just text and image. Like you have to think really like what makes a good learning experience. It's not going to want to make people click through all those things. And I think though, like smaller, medium-sized companies would benefit from e-learning experiences. It would offer flexibility. Like if you want to refer back to, like whatever it is that you learn, like you could just do that, as opposed to like if you do, like I love online, in-person training is great, but also like like if you want to refer back to something, like it's just not as easily like accessible with the materials and stuff, unless like you have something printed and you take it with you. But like for me, like the online access, like you could just go back and be like, what is that thing that I learned about if I don't remember, and like I just go in back into the training and refresh my memory, things like that. Trying to think like what else. Yeah, like the flexibility, like you'll be able to learn at your own pace. It's gonna take up not as much time, like in-person time, you know what I mean? Like you could customize the training and have people. Oh my God, I'm terrible. I'm a rambler. I'm like, I am the worst when I'm under pressure. I'm like, you put me under pressure like this.
Nope, we're just two friends chatting over coffee.
The worst. I'm the worst with
What
this. Okay.
I would agree with you fully because the from a operational perspective, there's a business to run. And while you and I are all about learning and training, you can't pull everybody offline all the time for training because you got to get the work done. So how do
Yeah.
you balance those two things? And
How
I
do you
can see
balance that? Yeah.
learning really being a nice a complement to instructor-led training for particular topics or to reach people that are maybe geographically dispersed or to provide, like you say, accessibility to go back and repeat things, uh, to reach maybe people that aren't able to come into the office for whatever reason. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I love the idea of leverage spreading the learning delivery out to these different mediums. So that's why I've been really excited to chat with you today about it. How does a company get started? Let's say you're one of these mythical small to medium-sized companies we're talking about. They're
Yeah.
thinking about maybe adding some e-learning. What would you recommend they do to kind of get started?
Oh, I was supposed maybe they would have to reach out to a consultant to see like, an instructional design consultant or someone who's in the learning and development space who would really have an understanding of like to help them understand what it is, again, needs analysis, what it is that they need. And see like if the consultant has the capability to create the courses, and like offer different there's so many considerations too though, because like where do you host the courses, right? Like so then you have to think of learning management system. What's your budget? Like what's the best what's the best place to host? But I feel like if you have like a good consultant, they're able like who understands instructional design, they'll be able to like really give you all of those things like from start to finish. Like here's your needs, here's the type of courses that we could offer, we could build it here like within your budget, and then here's where you could potentially host it and like give you like the rundown of the pros and cons of what works and what like pros and cons of each system. um Yeah, I think that's the way of it. Like, I mean, I guess I don't have like too much experience with that, like a startup company or how like they would start, but I feel like that would probably be a good starting point, like reaching out to an instructor. And there's a lot of people who do that. Like, there's a lot of instructional design consultants out there who do that. Like, that's their thing, and they're very, very good at it.
That's what I think so exciting. I mean, the couple courses I've dabbled with, again, very amateur hour experiments. We got the Rise 360 subscription, and I just started putting something together, and I did a bunch of YouTube searching. I mean, that was the
Oh yeah.
extent of it. Um, but I think it's an exciting time where there are so many professional designers like yourself who are available to guide a company. The financial outlay, I mean, there's a financial cost for sure,
Yeah.
but it's not like a $10 billion thing to get this up and running and off the ground. So whether a company does it themselves and kind of
Mhm.
fumbles around through it, or they bring in a pro, that it seems like it's way more reachable today than
Yeah.
it's ever been,
Oh my
to get
gosh.
a good quality e-learning program up and running.
Yeah, I mean, like, to be honest, and again, this is my opinion, don't come after me, people, but I feel like, like online learning is the way, like, of the future. I mean, everything, and yes, it's nice to have the instructor-led training, and that's not gonna go away. Like, we still need that type of training. Obviously, like, you have different professions that need that hands-on training or that in-person training. So that's never gonna go away, but like the online learning space that's just going to, in my opinion, blow up even more. And like the COVID, like during COVID year, like that just like when everything was dying down, like the online learning development industry, like that just started booming. And it's never really stopped since then, in my opinion. Like there's always gonna be and I work with a few clients who like government contracts and things like that, and the requests are online online training, so e-learning. And I just feel like you could reach a much wider audience, like again, like you mentioned, with e-learning, so I think that's the way.
So if we were going to go, you are now the spokesperson for
Ah,
all e-learning on the entire universe. No pressure. No, I'm
no.
totally kidding. What are some of the things you look for in an effective course that resonate with you, that make for a good learning experience? Like, what are some of those basics when you're actually doing the mechanics of the course that help the learner to learn and have an enjoyable experience?
Well, for me, number one, I like as soon, and I'm talking about as a learner now, not as an instructor, but like as a learner, if I take a course that is just text and like it's very text heavy and like just images that don't really provide any like doesn't really tie into the learning. Like for me, like that's I'm done. Like I'm already like checked out. So like for
Gone.
me, yeah, like literally I'm like I can't focus and even goes back to like presentations too. Like if like there's like a meeting and like you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, there's too much going on the slide. Like I'm like checked out. And like most people are like that. Like are like learning people to capture the attention of someone is like between 3 to 5 seconds, like for real. Like that's just how it is. It sucks, but if you don't have the attention within like 30 seconds, like 30 seconds is even too much. Like you're gonna lose people. You're gonna lose people. So you have to learn. You just have to see like use a variety of things in an online course, like implement scenarios. Like branching scenarios, things like that. You could do like knowledge tracks, like other activities that'll keep people like engaged, video, like just different types of rich media that you could use in your training, and is that it doesn't just revert like back to text or like a bulleted list. Like you have to have variety. Like people will get bored and not have a good learning experience. I think visuals are so important too. Like for example, I recently took a compliance training with my company, and this, oh my God, it was atypical. learning experience because it wasn't like your traditional, here's, like IT security and like blah, 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 blah. Like, what kind of password do you not use? Like that. It was so cute. It was like engaging. It was like little cute like animations and like there wasn't a lot on the screen. Like literally it was like maybe like an animated image and like maybe like a couple of words or like very quick flashcard interactions and that was like great. Like we were all like amazed by we didn't create the training by the way. It was another company. Like this is like really effective training. Like you captured our attention. We did the training all the way through and we took like we actually learned something from it and it was yeah so things like that like sometimes too much doesn't make a good learning experience either. So like think about, how you could use images. You could use, I'm not saying not to use images, but use images and really think about how that ties in with the content that you're trying to teach. Like is a learner going to learn something from the image? Is it going to enhance the learning experience? Not just like decorative, like someone smiling and be like, hey, like I'm here, like, like learning in a classroom, which you you see you see a lot. But yeah, like just really using like those videos. And again, it just goes back to budget too. Like, because for example, where I'm rambling again, but like where I'm located, like we don't have access to a lot of tools. So I can't like create like video like maybe an explainer video or like like something like that. So you have to like really challenge yourself and think outside the box creatively to think about how with the resource limited resources that I have, what can I do to create a more learning like a more engaging learning experiences. It doesn't just include text in a like a image. And then I've been at places where they do like the full on video, like they have a full on media production, and like you could have someone create a full on animation video or like an on-site video. Like it's just there's so much that you can do to create online learning training if you had the tools. So I get
It
excited because I'm like, there's so much to learn out there. There's so much to do. There's so much to implement. Like,
and it is I liked what you were saying that sometimes having a smaller budget, limited resources forces you to get a little bit more creative. And I would agree with you. That attention, whether it's e-learning in
oh yeah,
classroom, a guide, doesn't matter. You got to grab their attention like now.
yeah,
But I like what you were saying about not we all want the $1 million budget with the smoke machines and the
it's
Hollywood camp.
nice.
That yes, of course, we all want that. But sometimes I think when you've got to do more with less, it actually forces you to come up with more interesting and creative solutions sometimes. Um,
Yeah,
Now, do I want the big Hollywood budget? I'd sure love to give that a try.
yes.
But what are some of the creative things that you've seen that you really liked in addition to like what you just shared?
With the limited resources or just like with the big budget, like what?
With the limited resources, like what are some of the tips and tricks either you've used or you've experienced that can really grab people's attention?
Yeah, so for me, like right now where I'm located, we don't have a lot of resources, creative resources. So we do have Canva, so we use that. And so like in the way that I've been able to use Canva more creatively is, for example, I can create labeled graphics with Rise 360. Also, we have Storyline and Rise 360, but we mostly just stick to Rise 360. Um, I guess it's more user friendly for people. But anyway, I've been able to create custom images in Canva and use them as labeled graphics in Rise 360. Yeah, that's mostly what I like. Yeah, like if I in infographics, I create like infographics using Canva, and I feel like that's a little more engaging as opposed to just a picture. Like if you have a list of something, how can
Hmm.
you leverage Canva to be able to pair that text with something more engaging, that the user's not just gonna be like, okay, another list I gotta like read
Yeah.
read read through. So like for us, it really is just like that's the only resource that I have currently, Canva. Now personally I have other resources that I use, but that's again like like there's so many things out there. I really wish we had the ability to create video. Like we don't have like the ability to create video, and I think that's really limiting for any learning experience. I feel like that adds like a good variety. It doesn't have to be like a 30-minute video. Literally could be like a minute video explaining like something quick, and that just gives a good variety for learning instead of just the same old boring stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and hot tip for NBT Nation, if you're listening to this and maybe you're not a full-time trainer, you don't do training as a living like Yvonne and I do, Canva is such a powerful tool to really spice
yeah.
up any sort of learning. And I'm not affiliated with Canva in any sort of way. I'm
I
not,
wish
I
Canva.
wish, yeah, hello, we're over here.
Yeah.
Um, but it's such a great tool, and even the subscription base is not that expensive, and the
No.
free version is still really incredibly powerful. So, if you want to spice up your learning, regardless of the form it comes in, Canva can be a super useful tool, so much better than PowerPoint or any of those other things. Sorry, PowerPoint. Yvonne mentioned Rise 360. Again, I'm not affiliated with them in any sort of way, but that's the package I used in my attempts to put together some courses. And if you're not a pro level instructional designer like Yvonne, uh, Rise 360, great, powerful tool. It's pricey for sure, uh, but it's an investment that if you're considering e-learning, would highly recommend because you're just sort of grabbing their pre-made assets and you can put together your own trainings internally or do the smarter play, which is what Yvonne suggested, get a consultant to come in and kind of get you started, get you pointed in the right direction. But those two tools, Canva and Rise 360, super duper powerful, especially Canva. Again, hashtag sponsor us, please.
Yeah, for real. And I feel like, yeah, Rise 360 is just it's the it person right now. And those things change over time. At the end of the day, it's just a course authoring tool. But yeah, Articulate Rise does, and Storyline do offer a lot of templates that you could just like starter templates and you could just jump right in. And they offer a lot of tutorials within their website. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't be, because there's a lot of tutorials out there that show you step by step how to create a course. And then there's this other platform called Genially. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't, no.
So it's kind of similar. I have it pulled up here. It's kind of similar to like Storyline and Rise, but it's a lot less. And it's just comparable. So if you ever want to check that out, Genially, like people like TikTok, TripAdvisor, Dell, like big companies are using it. So I don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, as long as all learning authoring tools have like are kind of similar in a way, kind of like with the same, like the learning management system. Like once you learn how to do one, like you could figure out how to do all the other ones. And YouTube has a lot of great tutorials on how to like be creative. Like even with Canva, there's this one, oh my gosh, what's her name? I'm gonna have to look for it. Amanda something. She used to work for Canva, but she's also an instructional designer. And so like
Oh,
she uses Canva to create like these custom images that you could embed in Rise 360, because Rise 360 compared to Storyline is a little bit more limited. Obviously, you could do so much more with Storyline, but if you're just using Rise 360, you could really use Canva to create these beautiful custom images and kind of create it into your own design. Like it's crazy the things that she does. Like you could do with Canva and Rise 360. So I'll have to look for, like, I don't remember what her last name is, but she's very good at explaining these things on YouTube. So
yeah, no, absolutely. If you think of it, send me a link and I'll drop in the show notes, I'll drop links to Canva, Articulate, Genially. I'm very excited to check that one out myself. And the individual you just mentioned, so that NBT Nation can can go down the
Yeah.
rabbit hole.
And
Uh,
explore. Yeah.
yeah, and it's, I keep coming back to this idea of, putting together a holistic learning environment.
Hmm.
And, today we're talking e-learning. There's
Hmm.
the classroom delivery piece. There's the guides, the infographics, micro videos, learning libraries,
There's
blogs,
so many things. Yeah.
a trillion different things. But even, you're mentioning video, and it is amazing to me the power of just a mobile phone.
Yes.
And literally, I've done videos in my truck, no
Yeah.
microphone, no nothing, just blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. And like you say, a minute long, 2 minute long video can be so powerful. And then take that video, put it in a learning library, take that video, put it in a Slack channel as a quick little hit, watch the video in a stand up meeting before a shift, or add that video to an e-learning course to grab attention and make it customized to a particular company, so that it's like, to go back to the original thought, it's meeting whatever that need was for the
Yeah.
training, and it's relevant to the user. What are your thoughts on? I know I'm kind of jumping all over here.
Oh, you're fine. I'm the
Uh,
same way. I'm like,
well, you're talking learning experience. We talked a little bit about mechanics
yeah.
of putting it all together. How much do learners want the training to be relevant to them? Or in your experience, what I want to talk about how me as a learner, Adam is sitting down to do a training. I want to
Right.
get something out of it. I got
Yeah.
a job to do. I got emails piling up. I got pressures at home. I got, pressures on the job. I want to learn something. What are some of the things that you can do when you're putting the curriculum together to make sure that that material, so the learner knows and understands, hey, this is relevant to me. This is going to actually help me with my job. Are there any tips and tricks when you're putting the curriculum together to communicate that to the learner?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that when you're taking a training, you want to know, like, you want to make sure that it's relevant to the job that you're doing and how can it make, like, what are you taking away from it and how can you implement it? Like, what skills are you learning that you can implement into your job? And you don't like really want to waste your time, right? Like, you want to learn something from it. And so I feel like a lot, like, maybe like scenarios help to, like, really get close to that relevance with the job, as opposed to just here's the things that, here's a list of the things that you got to do and da, 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 no, like how, like, here's like a really practical scenario, like, of something that you may have experienced in your position. How can you handle that? Like, what route would you take? Like, what's the best approach? And that would make people, like, for me, I don't know, like, maybe I don't know if everyone's like that, but for me, I prefer scenario based type situations where or even like a video, like you could do a scenario with a video. Like, here's a clip, right? So and so, blah, 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 blah. And here's the thing, here's a scenario. What is it? Like, what would you do next? Like, how would you approach this? Like, that would really make me stop and think and be like, oh, shoot, like, I really have to, like pay, pay attention to see, like, what would I do and how that would affect me in my current position?
Isn't it
So,
amazing how when you ask the learner to apply the information in real time and
uh-huh.
do something with that information? Here's the steps of the procedure, ABCXYZ. What, now you're doing the procedure. Here is this situation. What are you going to do? Isn't it amazing how when you make them use the information in real time, like you say, they sit up in
Yeah.
their chair, they start
Yeah.
leaning in, they're like, "Oh crap, they're asking me a question." Ah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, just not just online learning. Like, you obviously, in like instructor-led training, you could do that as well, like the scenarios where it's not just lecture, like you're actually, like, it's an engaging session and you're involving everyone and, like, you're making them think. What would I do? What would be the best appropriate, like the best approach for this, instead of just talking or, in online just text. So that would be my answer for that. I'm speaking of personal experience and what I've experienced out as an instructional designer. Like, that's kind of what's captured people's attention. So,
No, that lines up with my experience as well. Again, regardless of delivery type, it's like
hmm
you say, you get people actually using the information. You're taking the thing, like you say, here's a scenario, what would you do?
yeah, what
Man,
would you do?
I'm leaning in, looking at that screen, and I'm really thinking,
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
heck would I do?
Exactly. Exactly. That's a good, at least that's what I think a good approach for that. So,
Kind of wrap up with what are some of the other tools that are out there, learning tools? You mentioned Genially,
oh,
Canva, Wix. What are some of your other favorites that a company can maybe think about, or at least do some quick Google searching on and see if it makes sense for them?
there are so many tools out there. I feel like that you could use as an instructional designer. We talked about Canva, Genially, there's Articulate, there's like all the Adobe suite, and it just depends to like within training there's also like I talk about accessibility a lot too. So like you could think about like closed captioning tool, color contrast, minimum tools, tools that'll help you write alternative text to images, really describing what's going on in the image for everyone to understand. What else is there? I have like a whole list, literally. I gotta look for it of resources that I like compiled. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to look for it. I'm like trying to think off the top on the spot. What else do I use? My top tools that I use are the color contrast analyzer, which is a color contrast minimum tool that's free online. Articulate, I use that on a daily basis. Canva, I use that daily. If you want to create, there's a lot of AI tools out there now too. So like if you want to create videos, there's Synthesia. If you want to do like in little animator videos, there's Beyond. I don't know if you've heard of those.
The first one is Centavia, yes, but the second one, no. That's
Yeah, it's spelled Vyod. So like you could do that. Even PowerPoint, honestly, like you could still use PowerPoint to create some pretty cool images. Like I've used that before to create like I like Canva's like similar to PowerPoint, but and so is Storyline. You could just, Storyline is kind of like a PowerPoint. We just put the slides. But um, what else? I have like a whole list of things. The Adobe Suite, like if you want to like create custom images that and you're like really wanting to learn how to that's more advanced though, but it's a good tool to learn. If you're using documents, like if you're creating documents and you're really thinking about accessibility, you have um, Adobe Acrobat where you could make sure that the documents are accessible. So there's like a little accessibility feature that helps you create the documents and make sure they're under compliance. What else? I'm trying to think what else. I have a list. I could share that with you if you want.
Yeah, I
I
look
have a
for it.
list.
These are you've shared a bunch of great tools, and you actually touched on a topic that I I put my notes together for our conversation. That's sitting over there. I haven't looked at it once. Super
Uh-huh.
helpful. Totally not ADD at all. Uh, uh, I meant to ask much earlier in the conversation about some of those accessibility issues,
Uh-huh.
and how, and I think that's a great um, uh, point of why utilizing an instructional designer,
hmm
a consultant, bringing somebody in to kind of help get a program up and running and off the ground. It doesn't have to be ridiculously expensive, and it could be very streamlined, and that individual can help guide an organization through some of those accessibility issues. Number one, to make sure the learning is fair and can be reached by everybody. And number
Yeah.
two, let's be honest, keep you out of legal hot water. I mean, not to,
Yeah.
you that is something that you have to consider, but far more importantly, you can make that learning available to everybody in your organization. And you can do that by bringing in some of this outside help
hmm
to get a program up and running and started. And whether you maintain that relationship or then you start to bring things in house, it depends on the company, of course. But what are your thoughts on that? Is that something an instructional designer can help a company with that's help get that up and running?
In terms of accessibility and like
Yes.
incorporate, yeah, I feel like if you're again, don't get mad at me, y'all, but I feel like if you're an instructional designer in today's age, you have to design and develop with accessibility in mind. It's just inclusive design is everything. You have to make sure that all learning experiences are accessible to everyone, to all learners. You don't want to create limitations, and I talk about this a lot. Like I go through this. My son has a sensory processing disorder. So at the school level, I'm a very big advocate for his learning experiences there, where I just like we're all different and we all learn and process very differently. And so like not one learner learns the same, and you have to make sure that there are different avenues for people to learn. So like if you're blind, for example, you may not always see the images, right? So how do you fix that? You're going to provide an alternative text, so alt text that's going to describe the image so that a person who has like low vision or is blind is able to understand the learning content. Like that's just I for me like that's just a seamless process in my design, and I have always advocated for that within my current organization, and I've helped implement and create like accessibility standards, teach people to really think about those things when you're designing and creating curriculum. Um, Now there's a new law that has been implemented by 2025, 2026. All like local government agencies, like the schools or like, I don't know, like courthouse, or like people who come in third party companies who come into like the school district, they have to make sure that anything that they create moving forward is accessible. That includes like apps, documents, online learning, anything that you like Word documents, PDF, like all those things need to make sure that they are compliant and accessible, or like you said, there could be a potential for like legal action or like for me, yeah, like there's always going to be a legal action, but for me, like the bigger picture is that is impacts it is going to impact the learner who may not experience learning experience the same way as another person. Like, you just have to consider it all. So that's been like a big argument, not argument, but like advocacy for me and my son over the years at the school level, because I feel like the school with the limited resources or like the like they don't see like the bigger picture of things on how like you could present learning information in various ways, or like if you're doing a writing assignment and the person is not able to write for whatever reason, like for example, I'll throw in my son in there, like he has a fine motor issue, and so like he gets very fatigued when he writes with a pencil. What other ways can they show you that they know and understand what it is that they're learning? It's not just by writing. You could do it with voice to text, you could do it with typing, you could audibly, like verbally express what it is that you're learning. There's so many different ways. And so like same for online learning, like for learning and development, like there you just have to think with accessibility in mind. And that like again, like we don't all learn and process the same way. And it's just a mindset thing. I think that's just something that like it is we need to make progress on, and like eventually, hopefully in the future, like everyone will be like, oh yeah, like we really do have to think inclusive design, and like not everyone has like the same reading level, and that's another thing, like the reading level. We talked about that before. Like if you're creating curriculum, you have to make sure that the reading level is not like at a 12, 13, 14th level, because not everybody has that reading level. Like, you want to make sure that people really understand what's going on. So like you make it between sixth to eighth grade reading level. So it's like simple, but not too simple, not too overly complex. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, like that's kind of the thing. I don't know if you ever heard of Dogman, like the book Dogman,
No, I don't think I
Captain
have.
Underpants. Have you heard?
What is
Have
it?
you Captain Underpants? You not heard of it?
Um,
Cat Kid.
no, I'm gonna have to check this out.
It's like it's
I'm
like
writing this
little
down.
kids books and movies now, or like even I have it right here. This one. So the
Oh,
author
okay.
is David Pilkey, and he does like the books Cat Kid, Captain Underpants, Dog Man is the big one. So anyway, my son's like truly obsessed with these books, but like the bigger reason on why he likes it is because so the author is he has dyslexia, diagnosed dyslexia and ADHD. And as a child, like back in the day, like there were just not a full understanding of like how those learning disabilities could impact your learning experiences. And so like he said that he would be pulled from the classrooms and put outside in the hallway because he was being a disruption instead of like really thinking, darn, like what is happening? Why is a student not like why, like what is the derailment? Like what's happening? Really stopping to think, anyway. So he goes on to say that the reason like he was pulled out of class many times and like they really didn't give him a chance at the school level because they didn't understand that he learned differently, but he really understood what was happening. And he's like, look at me now. Look at me now. And he's like, all those teachers who said that, like put that limit on me because they just thought that I didn't know what was going on and I was just a disruption. I like have dyslexia, yeah, and I have ADHD, yeah, but that's my superpower. And like a lot of the characters in his books are like that. Like they have like, like they're dying like the like ADHD or like dyslexia, but that's their superpower. And so like my son resonates a lot with that because like, we've had a lot of similar experiences at today age at the school level where we're not giving students the fair opportunity, by really understanding that everyone learns differently and it's okay, and that's okay. It's okay to learn with a video. It's okay to I don't know, express your thoughts using not just the writing medium but like I don't know, like using text to speech. Like there's so much technology nowadays that you could really leverage your learning experiences. And I feel like at the school level especially we're stuck there, like they're just stuck, like they can't see, like not always, but like a lot, like they just can't see beyond that. And it's the same way with on like, online learning, like or like in-person training or instructional design in general. I could talk about this for days and days and days. So like if you don't cut me off, I'm gonna be like here all day, like I feel like this way and you should design this way. And I'm very like meticulous with when I do my reviews, of like course builders. I say, okay, like this is where we want to be with like the inclusive design and accessibility in mind. How can you make this like better? Like if you have a video here, can we add closed caption? You know, so that everybody has an opportunity to learn the same way. Anyway, this
Well,
can.
and I let you go because that was beautiful and very, very well said. And I think you're right. There's sort of the two components to it. There's the justice or equality or making the learning available to everybody because that's humans deserve that, and mixing it up so that people have the ability to come to work and do their job and do it, and we mix up the delivery of the learning to from that justice equality type component.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of the coin, which I think is that naturally makes it far more interesting. Like you don't have to force everything in your company through this one bucket of we do everything in the classroom. We do everything
Yeah.
via e-learning. We do everything via shadowing. We do everything, by if you mix it up, the
Yeah.
delivery, you not only give people more chances to learn, but it just naturally becomes a better experience regardless
Mhm.
of delivery method. And that's the whole point. I mean, if a an owner of a company or the director of a firm or whatever isn't taking the time to invest in training, they want an outcome. They want
Yeah.
their teams to grow and develop and do their jobs better and enjoy their jobs and stay with the company longer and all those things. But they want the team to grow. They want their customers to be happier because
Mhm.
that means there's going to be more dollars at the end of the month. I mean, that's the whole
Yeah.
point of the exercise. And even if it's a nonprofit or a governmental agency, you
Mhm.
still have a mission you're trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
So anyway, I get equally passionate on this subject because I there's the human human rights. I don't know if that's the right word, but the human element to it. But it also just makes it a hell of a lot more fun. And
Yeah.
people learn more and you achieve what you're there to do, which is, I think you and I are hardwired very similarly, that
Hmm.
we enjoy our jobs because we're helping people and
Yeah.
we want to see them succeed. And that's where our energy comes from. So if you are thinking about e-learning or just learning in general inside your company, think about those accessibility issues. It's the right
Mhm.
thing to do anyway, but it makes your training a heck of a lot more interesting, which means you're going to get a better result. At least that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think so too. And also it's been a law for a very long time. Like we have to, and like, like corporate companies are seeing it right now, like where they're getting lawsuits because like their training isn't accessible. And a lot of the contracts that are coming through are requesting that. They are requesting that the courses are um compliant with accessible web accessibility standards, like that is an actual request that I've seen come through multiple times, so I know that it's a thing. And if a quick Google search will give you a very good insight of what the laws are in place, like that it's a requirement by this year or next year that all things need to be kind of like, you know, compliant. And again, I'm very passionate about that, and I really advocate hard for that within like my current place of employment, because especially, like if you're in education, like you gotta like you have to like be able to think that way, like inclusive design and accessibility, and you want everyone to have access in the same way. I taught special education for a long time, and a lot of the students that I taught were medically fragile students, and what that means is that a lot of them couldn't speak, and so like we had to think about, and that doesn't mean that they don't know what's happening, right? And just forces you to like really think outside the box and think about how can I teach students who don't have a voice, or like don't like how can I give a student who doesn't have like an actual voice a voice? Like so a lot of that was like using assistive technology and things like that. That would help them show that they are actually understanding what is being taught, and so like I don't know. I like I said, I could talk about this for a very, very long time. And I am like a very big advocate for that with both at like work and at my son's school for, like inclusive design and accessibility. So, but if you
Well,
have any other questions related to that, I'm happy to answer it. I feel like that's my jam. That's my
yeah.
jam.
Well, there you go. I think that's a good place to wrap up this episode of NBT Talks.
Okay.
Yvonne, you've shared so many great points, whether it's, have a needs analysis, make the learning experience interesting and effective. We've talked about a bunch of useful tools. And again, I'll go back and link those in the show notes so that everybody can go and click and whatnot. And then we wrapped up with this idea of accessibility. So it's obviously, leveraging e-learning and instructional design in general is more than we can handle in just one topic.
Yeah.
But I sure appreciate you joining me today. And hopefully, this is getting leaders of firms kind of thinking and mulling over how do we go from having nothing to having something? And how do we
Yeah.
go from having something to making that something great so that we can support our teams, drive business outcomes, make our customers happy, and make business happen. So I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. Most people are going to know you online, I think, as eLearningbestie, but I know you got
Okay.
a lot of other channels. How can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you? How do you want them to find you, if at all?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I don't know that I was kind of all over the place, but I get nervous when I'm put on the spot like that. But I promise I do have a good understanding of what it is, instructional design and like all things accessibility. But
Oh,
anyway,
that came through very clearly.
sometimes I'm like, I am not making as much sense as it is in my head. Anyway, but yeah, I'm on TikTok, eLearning Bestie. If you wanna, like hop on over there and say hi. And I also do like I like to travel on my off time. So I have another account, Latina on Travel, on TikTok also. So if you want to head over there and see what it is that I'm up to, you're welcome to. And yeah, if you ever want to talk more things, accessibility, come at me. I got it. I got resources. I got tips.
Well,
So
well, I can tell NBT Nation this. If you need instructional design help, for sure, eLearning Bestie. But I got to tell you, I've been really enjoying Latina on Travel and seeing all the amazing sites that you travel to. Very cool. There's sort of the normal places and then some really cool, I don't know if exotic is the right word, but really cool destinations. So definitely check both those channels out, NBT Nation, because they're way cool. Very, very
yeah.
cool. But I sure appreciate you joining me for a little bit of a chat here. Again, we're just kind of putting our toes in the whole instructional design, e-learning world. NBT Nation, at the end of the day, you want results, not yawns, regardless of the delivery method. And if you listen to what Yvonne shared with us, we'll definitely get there. Thanks for joining us. You can find me all over social media. Never stop screaming about effective training. And you can always find me at the home of no boring training, noboringtraining.com. Thanks for joining us today.